All right. So, okay. So, Mel is a surrogate who's at the beginning of her journey with her IP, who's in the room here, and so she's going to talk a bit about what motivated her to carry for someone else. Emma, who's on the line, who's just going to get the video up in a minute, is an experienced surrogate. She's done this 2 times for gay dads in Auckland. But interestingly, as I said earlier, the IVF process they did both times in San Diego. She carried the first child for them in 2018, when Emma was 30, and the second child in December 2019. Emma's in Wanganui, with her husband Brian and her 3 kids. Hello, Emma, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Sam.
Great. Let me just bring in Angela as well. So Angela's coming to us from Nelson, I think. So she's the convener of New Zealand Egg Donor Forum, and she's an experienced egg donor. So we're going to talk to her too about the issue of finding egg donors here in NZ. Angela, hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Okay, I'm just going to turn myself off because I look really weird on the screen as well. Okay, so Angela, we might start with you. Can you tell us a bit firstly what got you interested in being an egg donor yourself?
When my husband and I were having our family, we had a number of miscarriages. And so we always thought that if we were lucky enough to finish our family, that we'd kind of pay it forward and donate to somebody. To start with, it wasn't egg donation we were thinking about. I didn't really know anything about egg donation. We were thinking more along the surrogacy lines.
Yep.
And so I'd always thought I'd do a surrogacy. But then I had a work colleague that approached me when I was pregnant with my second child, and I got talking to her about surrogacy, and she mentioned that she actually needed an egg donor herself, and that she couldn't find one after looking for years and years, and she was going overseas to find a donor. And that kind of sounded crazy to me, that in New Zealand we'd have to go overseas to the States or to some other country to find an egg donor. So that kind of got me along the thinking about getting into egg donation.
Wow. And you, by that stage, you'd had 3 kids of your own, had you?
So yeah, I had 2. Well, I was actually pregnant when I was really starting to think about it with my second child. Right.
Can you give people a bit of an idea of what the process involves for a donor in terms of the medical and counselling workup? How much?
So if I think back to the last donation that I did, you have a meeting with the doctor around all your medical background to make sure that you're healthy, and you go for some scans to begin with and some blood tests, and they do a big genetic profile on you to make sure that you're fit and healthy yourself. Yep. Before you go down the road of the actual donation, and then that's pretty much the same as a standard IVF cycle. So you inject drugs into you and you have scans throughout, and then blood tests, and then the procedure at the end.
Got it. And how, for you, I mean, how many times have you been a donor?
I've done 6 cycles, and that's resulted in 4 children so far. Wow. To 3 different couples. And then I've also on-donated some embryos in Australia to another couple. Once the first couple that I donated to had finished their family, they decided to on-donate the rest of the embryos.
Okay, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
How do you decide who you'll donate eggs to? I mean, do you do that via the online forums?
Yeah, I prefer to find the people that I would donate to myself.
And what do you look for?
It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of like dating. So you want to get to know the people, and I kind of look for people that have got similar values and morals to what I do. So
how do you work that out?
Just by chatting to them and video calling, and usually I would meet them in person at least once before I decide to donate to them. But it's usually a lot of messaging back and forwards, very similar to what you would do if you were trying to date somebody. And then I guess in the end for me, it all draws down to would I sit down and be happy to have a coffee and a conversation with this person now, but also down the track in the future. Yeah.
I mean, what sort of expectation do you have of ongoing contact with your recipients?
So I only do non-donations who are happy to have ongoing contact going forwards, just because I've got kids myself, and I would hate to think that they'd bump into some half sibling at a party one day, because New Zealand's a very small place, and just not know who that person was genetically in relation to them. So I've actually got a Facebook page that all my recipients are a member of, so they all know of each other as well. But it also means that if anything ever happened to me, that they could always talk to each other as well.
That's nice. But in terms of ongoing contact, I mean, do you expect your recipients to be sort of sending you, keeping you in touch every month, or?
No, I never say that. I kind of like the relationship to develop organically, so I don't want to ever say like you've got to send me a message and a photo every month. But by the time you get to the point of doing the donation, they become kind of like friends or part of your extended family anyway. So when the baby's born, you know, you're already on their Facebook, so you're going to see pictures of it, and they might want to send you a photo every now and again, but it's never that I would expect that from them. And they all live in different cities to me as well, so it's not like we're just going to bump into each other. So the only way we've really got of keeping in contact is via the internet, unless we go to visit.
When you said you look for similar values, do you look at profiles that intending parents have put up about themselves when you're choosing someone?
Yeah, I like to have a good read through of all the profiles and have a think about what they've said. To me, things that rule someone out would just be bad, it sounds stupid, but bad spelling and bad grammar, just because I'm a bit of a nerd, and if they can't spell and communicate, that's not going to really work for me going forwards. And just that they're open, and we don't necessarily have to have everything in common, but just that I would feel comfortable talking to them and that they would feel comfortable talking to me. I'd rule out any kind of anti-vaxxers or anyone that I couldn't really see myself getting along with. Yeah.
That's great. Emma, let's talk to you for a minute. Thanks for joining us. You carried for some gay mates, so you already knew these guys, did you?
Yeah, so I met them, maybe 6 years ago. I went to a surrogacy get-together that usually happens every year, but COVID causes a few issues. And then sort of lost contact with them until about sort of 2 years later. And I said to my husband at the time, would you still be okay if I was to go down this path? And he was obviously all good with it. And so I got to know them a little bit more. They came down to visit with my family and get to know the kids, and it sort of just went from there.
Okay, well, so were they good mates of yours at the start, or were they more?
I suppose I would probably just call them associates at the start, but we're good friends now. Like, we communicate, I don't know, at least on a weekly basis, or I'll just get random messages from them. I occasionally go up to Auckland. They celebrate Mother's Day with me every year. So it's we're sort of just extended family now.
Yeah, nice. And had you sort of wanted to be a surrogate and then you found out about them, or did you not think about it till they contacted you?
No, so I must have been living under a rock, and I didn't actually realise that the art of surrogacy actually existed until someone I knew, I met her and she had carried before, and it sort of just planted the seed in the back of my head of, oh, maybe this is something that I would like to do in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Right. What about your husband and kids? Were they on board to start with?
Oh, definitely. Like it. I was open and honest with my kids. I don't know whether it was from the very beginning when we were still sort of getting to know each other, and there was no guarantee that that San Diego would approve me for an IVF cycle. So I think in the end, I told the kids maybe 4 weeks out from the first trip to San Diego with their first boy, and they were on board then. They completely understood the process and how it was never going to be our baby. I mean, genetically, it's not any relation. The babies aren't any relation to me. So the kids understood that, but they were fully involved with both pregnancies and understood that process. My 8-year-old at the time attended both of the births. I thought she asked, and I thought it would be an experience for her, either that or it would put her off having kids. But yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So what about sort of the lead up in terms of what effect it had on your life at home and your body? Was it really hard work?
IVF is not for the weak. It's especially like San Diego they're all about medicated cycles. So I'm already a highly strung female. So to then be putting, daily progesterone injections into my thighs for 3 solid months after the transfer was horrendous. But it was grueling. I feel like I'm lucky in the sense that because we chose to go through San Diego, I missed a lot of the bureaucracy stuff to do with ECART and all of that jazz. I never would have been approved through ECART due to my BMI at the time, whereas San Diego took all of my pregnancy history into account and realized that I've never had an issue with fertility or with carrying my children, and sort of approved me that way. So the process leading up to that trip was relatively easy. I think I had 3 scans to check my lining. The last one would have been maybe 3 or 4 days before I flew out.
Right.
That bit stressful because if the lining hadn't have been where we needed it to be, that's it. The whole cycle's cancelled and flights are cancelled, money's lost. So it's really is a gamble.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me, how can someone carry a baby and then give it up? Can you explain to people what headspace you need to be a surrogate?
Yeah, so I got that question quite a lot. Even after I had Yavi, people were like, oh, but aren't you sad because you've given away your baby? And I'm like, but he was never my baby to begin with. You need to, I can only speak for myself, but I went into it knowing that no matter which way you looked at it, these children they'd never be mine, whether genetically or not. They were always going to be my friends' babies.
Yeah.
So I still bonded with them, but it was a different kind of bonding. There was no I loved them and I still love them now, but it's not a maternal kind of love, if that makes sense. It's different to how I love my own children.
Yeah. So with the births, did you sort of express colostrum or breast milk for the kids?
So this is I'm on a few Facebook surrogacy pages, and this question comes up quite a bit because I am odd or rare, I suppose, in terms of surrogates. So I breastfed from day one, all through the hospital stay, daily while they were still in Wanganui. So with Yavi, it was 1 week. With Yana, it was 2 weeks. So Yana, I fed twice a day for the 2 weeks. Just we'd had a traumatic birth with her. and some health issues afterwards. So it just made sense. And in between that time, I had 3 hourly alarms set on my phone, including through the night. And I expressed for, it was 3 or 4 months with Yavi and then 4 months with Yana. I think the last in-person Growing Families conference that I went to in Auckland, I was actually the surrogate that sat in the crowd breastfeeding her surrogate baby. So it was, the dads were on board. They obviously didn't have the means to breastfeed. And for me, I never bonded with my own children through breastfeeding. So I knew that I wouldn't bond with these babies. And I'm a good cow, so why not?
Wow, that's great. What kind of support do you expect as a surrogate during your pregnancy from your IPs? What kind of practical things can they help with?
I suppose for me it was a little bit different because obviously I'm in Wanganui and my IPs are in Auckland, so it's not as simple as saying, can you come round and pick the thing up off the floor because I can't bend down that far. But I suppose if I was to do it again with, say, local IPs, it would be I'd want them to sort of be involved and help with the things that I'm not able to do. Like there were times with my own kids while pregnant with Yana and Yavi that I couldn't do things with them at school, either from sheer exhaustion or, the 9 months worth of morning sickness that I had. And so the practical things are just, basic household stuff that you struggle to do while pregnant. Yeah.
I mean, was it really hard then that they weren't there in the same town as you?
Completely and utterly hard. Harder with Yana because they also we only did a 6-month stand down. So Yavi was born in October 2018 and Nick and I flew to America in the April the following year, so 6 months. And so when through my pregnancy with her, they obviously had a baby that wasn't even a year old, so it made it more difficult for them to travel down for things like scans or appointments and whatnot. So it's, really hard to do that much distance.
Yeah, sure. I mean, critics of surrogacy of all kinds, feminists, some groups, say any surrogacy is exploitative of women. I mean, what's your attitude to that? Do you feel like anybody who's caring for someone else is being exploited?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I suppose maybe in the likes of America it would exist. You've got the whole complication of commercial surrogacy over there. So I would say exploitation probably does happen over there because it involves money. And I mean, maybe to an extent it probably has happened here in New Zealand, but I've never felt exploited for carrying them or anything. Yeah. Okay, great. Mel, come and sit in the seat. Thank you for being patient. So, Mel, you're based in Upper Hutt, yeah? And you've got kids of your own? 4? Yeah. Right. What made you think about being a surrogate? When?
A friend of mine, they were friends of ours were having fertility issues, and they were told that they might need to look at having a surrogate, and that got my mind working. And so I went away and spoke to my husband, and we talked about it for a while, and then we went back and offered to them that we would carry their baby, and they are now heavily pregnant with their own, and they've managed it, so it was no longer required. And so I went on to website, Love Makes a Family, and made my own profile and started looking at other profiles and found Mel.
Wow. How long ago was this that you found Mel?
We've been talking for about 4 months.
Right. Wow. And were there lots of profiles of people on that website?
Heaps, hundreds.
Okay. So big question, what were you looking for in a profile?
I got lots of people message me.
Yep.
Some were really genuine and, explaining their stories or, asking about my story, and some were blatantly rude,
Right.
and they just got deleted. So just looking for people who, yeah, we could get along with and
Yep.
who had the same moral code, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Your partner.
Yeah.
And what was his take when you said, "Oh, honey, I'm going to carry baby"? Was he sort of shocked or?
Initially, he was not on board, but I had just had a baby and it was hard, yes. So he was like, "Really, again, already?" But we're nearly 4 years out now, so he's literally on board.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well. Okay. Your parents, were they consulted, or do they have an opinion?
Oh, I'm sure they do. But
Have they
they're
voiced it?
supportive. They're very supportive.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emma, what about yours? I mean, were your parents thinking this was a crazy thing for their daughter to do, or?
I will be honest, at first, I think they thought I was having a mental breakdown. But they were on board, and you know, they've welcomed them into our family. The second trip to San Diego with Yana, because we only ever had to go, I only ever did 2 transfers, so they worked straight away. Right. But with Yana, Nick recognised how much I struggled being away from my family for the first trip. So my mum came along with me for the second trip, along with Nick as well, because he didn't want to miss out.
Yeah.
So my parents were, apprehensive at first because they didn't know the ins and outs, but then we're completely on board.
Right. And did you do your full cycle in the USA, or could you start your meds here in New Zealand?
So I started some of the meds in New Zealand, but it was only the estrogen suppositories, or whatever they're called, pessaries, something like that, and then picked up the rest of my medication in the States.
Okay, got it. And did the first transfer work, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So
both times?
Yeah, so both times it worked. Yeah, it worked first time for both of the kids. The first time round, we opted to put 2 embryos in.
Yep.
Just to see how it went. So both embryos did take to start with, but by the time we got to the first scan, all you could see is obviously a sac with a forming baby in it, and then a empty sac, so to speak. And then with Yana, it was the other dad's turn, and he only ended up with 1 viable embryo. Yeah. So in order to have Yana, in order to have 2 genetically related siblings through the egg donor, it required that transfer with Yana to work straight away, because the egg donor had stopped donating after that cycle.
Well, the pressure's on.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Mel, your intended parents got lots of embryos. Have you talked about how many transfers you go through in case the first one didn't work?
No, but only 1 at a time.
Sure, okay.
Only 1.
Okay, fine. But I mean, would you do more than 1 transfer if it didn't work? Yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, I've heard of surrogates who've done sort of 5 or 6 transfers because the first ones didn't work, and they eventually got there, but that's a lot.
Yeah, Mel's been through more though, so I've got to give my everything.
Yeah, yeah. And I must confess, the surrogates I've met are usually stubborn and they want it to work and they don't want to give up. Yeah, wow. If anyone got any questions for these guys they want to ask while we've got them about what's been talked about? There's one more for you, Mel. I mean, what's your expectations of support? You'll also be at a bit of a distance to your intended parent, not far. It's only what, an hour and a half away. You are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, are you gonna? Do you know? What do you expect? What's expected to be the hardest thing for you? Do you think?
I really expect that they'll be as involved as possible, because I think it's really important. For them as much as for me. You know, like it's their baby, it's their pregnancy as far as I'm concerned. So anytime, any appointments, it's Mel's to be there.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of expectations.
Yeah.
That we have some sort of relationship, but I don't want to live in each other's pockets afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
Not really.
Great. Angela, one last question for you. on the forums which you're involved with egg donors, I mean, how many egg donors do you find there are at any one time who are sort of available in New Zealand? Almost. Are there many?
I wouldn't know how many, but we've got a egg donor group where just the donors can talk to each other and support each other.
Yep.
And I know that there's at least 30 or 40 donors there. I think a lot of donors, they're not necessarily actively posting, but they might be reading all the posts.
Right.
And just when that right person or right couple comes along, then they might get a bit more involved.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Emma, have you heard about this Love Makes a Family website thing that Mel's used?
Yeah, so that was set up by a gay dad in Auckland called Christian, and he set that up after Frankie was born, I think it was. So it's only been around for maybe, is it 1 year, 2 years maybe? I've lost count with COVID. But I have heard good things about it. I haven't actually, I call myself retired now, so I haven't actually looked into it.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much. It's great to have you on the panel. Really appreciate it. People have loved it. That's great. Thanks. That's great.
Thank you.
All right, let's do that parent panel now. So I need 3 chairs because we've got 3 parents we're going to talk to. Stuart, on here. You guys can stay on and listen if you like, because you can probably listen. So we should have Christian is here. Here he is. All right, I'm just going to put you guys.
My name to Chris as well.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll get going.
Okay, let me just, I'm just going to try. Okay, so that's great. All right, so thank you guys for coming on this panel today. Let me just by way of introduction, Stuart, as I said before, is a gay dad with 3 kids via, it's egg donor surrogacy, gestational?
And traditional surrogacy.
Traditional, okay. So we're going to talk about his journey in a minute. Chris and his husband Mark are from Christchurch, and again they engage with their friend in traditional arrangements. And Lucas is 4, is that right? 5 now. And your daughter must be 2 then, isn't she? She's 2. Oh, yeah. And one of them is got with your sperm and one with your partner's sperm, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So traditional surrogacy. So first time around was Mark, and then the second time myself.
Yeah, great. And Chris is a very recent dad, 2020, I think, August. And Logan was born in the USA. You started your journey in 2017, didn't you? And I still have my notes, you had 2 fails with your first surrogate. So that first surrogate was also in the US, was she?
Yes.
Yeah,
The whole
okay.
journey is all based in
Yeah, okay. And you had to navigate COVID-19 for coming home.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that too in a minute. Yeah, man. Look, Stuart, let's start with you. How long have you guys been together as a couple?
Well, we met on a train, and probably about. I think it must be somewhere in the region of 15 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. When did you start thinking about having kids?
When we moved to New Zealand, so we moved to New Zealand in 2008, and we started having a conversation about kids. But at that time, surrogacy was something that Elton John and famous people did. It was like, well, that wasn't something that we were going to do. So it was like, could we do adoption? What was we were thinking? Really, at that time, it looked as if it wasn't going to happen at all, because as a gay couple you couldn't adopt, so it looked as if it was a kind of dead end. And then we started to look at surrogacy, and that's how it took off for us. And I mentioned earlier on, I would say why we done traditional surrogacy. So we done traditional surrogacy because we couldn't use a clinic at the time. At that time, clinics wouldn't do surrogacy for gay couples because ECAP wouldn't approve an application by a gay couple, because OT wouldn't approve a couple for an adoption because the courts wouldn't issue an adoption order for gay couples.
How long ago was this?
That would be 10 years ago.
10 years ago,
Yeah.
right.
But so things really changed with the Marriage Amendment Act
Right.
in New Zealand, where gay couples could get married, and then myself and my partner, we took our case to court. We filed for adoption for our 2 children because we're not married, we're a de facto couple.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we had to take it to court. And when we were taking our application forward, OT said, well, you probably won't get this through the court. And we said, well, try us. So, we've done it. And I mean, I think obviously it's beneficial to us that one of us was a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
That we were able to navigate that thing. So we had to take it to the court. And then once we got to court, the court said, yeah, it's fine.
Right.
Granted the
well,
adoption order.
Just let me come back a step. How did you find your surrogate in the first place?
Through NZ Surrogacy, another website. So there's the Love Makes Families, the new one.
Yes.
But NZ-Surrogacy was the original.
Yeah, yeah. And you put a profile up on there, you guys.
We put our profile up on there. And the difference between the 2 websites is with NZ Surrogacy, intended parents are not allowed to contact potential surrogates.
Yes.
So you basically put up your profile and say, this is us. And then you hope that the surrogate contacts you with.
Yes.
I think Love Makes Family was set up to overcome that.
Yeah.
Situations so people could contact the surrogates. That,
Okay, got it. How long did you have to wait to get surrogate contacting you on that old website?
We had our surrogate was our third person to
Third?
offers a third.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the thing about surrogacy is you need to find somebody you like. As much as the surrogate is looking for somebody they like and that they connect with, you as the intended parents want to have that too as well, because you're creating a family and this person is going to be an important part of it, and your children are going to want to know who this person is.
Yeah,
so you want somebody that you like, who's going
sure.
to be part of your family.
So you're saying the first 2 you connected with didn't gel?
Didn't gel. It just didn't
Okay.
work. For one reason or another, it didn't work. Some of it was one of the religious views that
Shouldn't work
I
out.
had none. And then somebody else wanted to be like a shared family, to be part of a family raising a child together, which we didn't want as well. So
yeah.
And then Christy, our surrogate, came along, and fabulous person. So we've got 3 children, all from Christy.
Yeah. And did she carry all 3?
Yeah, all 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many kids of her own does she have?
None.
None.
No. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So were you nervous, or was she nervous about wanting to keep the child because she didn't have kids of her own?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. I think everybody in this journey shares that thing because of the way the law is in New Zealand, which is that you are the intended parents. You may have actually maybe your own embryo, but you're not legally the parent of that child under the law. So everybody worries about it. To the same extent, so does the surrogate. She worries that you're going to bugger off and leave her with the kid halfway through. So you have this sort of tension that's going on through the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, I think that is why you have to be vigilant. You have to, if there's something in your mind that says this isn't right, walk away. Be prepared to walk away, and it's awful to have to do it.
Sure. I mean, I've got a few surrogates I know well in Australia who also have carried a few times and don't have kids of their own. So I know, surrogates can do it. Yeah. But I think there are some states that don't allow it. But you're saying here it is allowed, it is possible.
That's because it was traditional surrogacy out by the clinic, you could do whatever the hell you want. But if you went through a clinic and ECAR process, then ECAR wouldn't approve it. That she has to have completed her own family.
Got it. Okay.
But I mean, I think there probably has been cases where ECAR's approved cases with parents.
And in her case, was she just the mindset, I'm happy to give you a kid, but I don't want to raise them myself? Is that her doesn't want to have kids?
Yes, never wanted to have kids, doesn't no intention of having them, and felt, well, I'm healthy enough, probably, I could probably carry some kids, so I'm going to do it. And that's all.
Yeah, amazing. For you guys, let's talk about the first surrogacy journey. What was the hardest part of that first one?
I think it was finding out of all of this stuff that you guys are finding out about today. There's your head, trying to, what's that case, or Ramatamaviki, what's their thing, what's that assessment look like? And then you worry about that interview. Am I going to pass this interview?
And the interview's not until after birth, isn't that right? It's an interview before birth.
Does before the
Right.
So it's while the surrogate's pregnant,
Okay.
effectively you've been through that. Typically 6 months in or something. But for us, it was after the children, because we didn't, with the first one, we didn't take it to court. We basically lived with this first child with no legal status whatsoever, and respect the child because we were told you can't adopt, you can't do anything. So we just sort of carried on as a family, and at some point someone's going to knock the door and say,
But you're saying, so at the time, your first bubba, it was your surrogate's name on the birth certificate as the only parent?
and my partner was on it as
Because he was, okay.
yeah,
He was-
but he wasn't supposed to be on it.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be, he's considered to be a sperm donor, so not supposed to be on it, but
Yeah, well, Chris, let's go to you guys. So, how long have you and Mark been together for?
Mark and I have been together for 13 years.
Right, okay. When did you start thinking about the kid thing?
Probably 2 or 3 years after we first started dating. Just we both knew each other. We wanted to have children one day, but we didn't know how the hell that was going to happen. That was probably maybe a few years after sort of realizing we're both on the same page as to when I started to do the research into it. And like you guys have mentioned, the bombardment of information and misinformation was really confusing.
Yeah.
Yes, and that sort of led me eventually towards contacting fertility associates, who then suggested maybe NZ Surrogacy as a forum to join.
Okay, great. Did you practice by getting a cat or a dog first?
Oh, yeah, we had a cat. We still do.
Okay, great.
So we're winning, right? So,
Yes, you had that. What about finding a surrogate? Did you use one of these forums Stuart's talking about?
yes, so we joined NZ Surrogacy, I think in maybe 2015, and put up a profile on there, navigate the space and the rules and everything like that.
Yeah.
And maybe after about maybe 4 months, we started talking with a few people, but one of them was a woman who had offered to have our children. And probably 6 to 8 months after that, she made an offer to help us.
Wow. Did you meet in person much?
So there was a lot of this dating concept that people have been talking about, a lot of back and forth.
Is it online? You're talking about?
Online, yeah, and then on Facebook, so beyond the surrogacy forum.
Yeah.
And then we first met in person going to one of the surrogacy get-togethers in Taupo, which they try to do annually.
Yeah,
So
okay.
first in-person meeting.
And did she offer to use her own eggs? Is that how it worked out? Did she say?
She had already had 3 children through traditional surrogacy using her own eggs.
That was before.
Yeah,
Oh,
with
great.
home insemination rather than going through a clinic.
Okay. Was her first recipients a gay couple too, or?
Yes, they were. Firstly, a gay couple, and then 2 heterosexual couples after that.
Oh my
Before
God,
us.
you were 4th.
4th and 5th, yeah.
Wow. Okay. It's amazing.
It's a lot of babies, eh?
It's, okay, so can you just talk us through the practicalities of home insemination? Do you just sort of bring it over with you to the?
Oh, wow. Look. Okay, so she flew down from Palmerston North after tracking her ovulation cycle.
Yeah.
So she got that down to a T and was already quite experienced doing it.
Right.
So she came down a few days before that was due to peak, and then we gave it a go for 2 days. So basically, she stayed with us in our home, and we had a lot of fun doing lots of stuff around the city. And then the cringy part at first is one of us goes to a room, does what we need to do, and get some bottles and
you just bring the
syringes.
syringe, do you?
Yeah.
Syringe thing?
Yeah, just typical stuff you get from. I went to the hospital, so I kind of just nicked a few. Just 5 for 1, whatever you want.
Right.
And she goes and has some private time and does what she needs to do, basically.
Right. And did she need to sort of line it back for a few hours, or?
She did. We watched Headspace, the movie. Yeah, that was really good. And we were really fortunate with Nadine. She got pregnant that first try.
Wow.
And then with Lily, 3 years later, it's the second try.
Second try?
Yeah.
That's great. I remember one guy who we had on a panel here years ago, another steward, and I think they went 12 times. They went to visit their surrogate 12 months, and the 12th time it worked.
Yeah.
So, which is, I think they tried every month with home send. Did you get sperm tested before you tried, or did you just hope?
We had no reason to believe we would have any issues, which is probably a little bit naive, right?
Yeah.
So no, we didn't with the first time. And then the second time, our surrogate had a few troubles getting pregnant before with another couple. And so to rule out anything, I did get a test done. Yeah.
Okay, good. Christian, let's talk to you for a second. So you guys, you're in Grantland, the Bubbers here somewhere. You became dads 2020. Okay, so tell us how you decided on the USA. It's somewhere to go.
Well, I think like most people, we didn't know where to start.
Yep.
But we wanted to have a family with kids, and we look at basically in this big ocean. Think about we initially started Googling, how we can become parents, and we ruled out the possibility of adoption. But we also think that finding a surrogate in New Zealand would be very challenging for us as well.
Yep.
So we started overseas, looking at Thailand, Vietnam, cheaper options.
Yep.
We also know there's legal implications in those countries as well. So it's finally come down to the list of United States. So that's how we decided to stay.
And what made you choose the US over somewhere else?
Because we know that it's a well-trialed system,
Yep.
and many parents have achieved their dreams here.
Yeah.
And also it's transparent because it is commercial surrogacy. So everything will be in the contract.
Yep.
It's very detailed. Our contract with our surrogates and two, have even outlined that what they can eat and what they can't. And
Wow.
and if you have a coffee, how many times a week?
Right. Okay.
And all those little details is already put in there for us.
Yeah.
So we felt that it's a protection for us.
Yeah. Great. These other guys didn't need an extra separate donor. What did you guys do about the egg donor thing?
So in the US, we needed two separate. One is egg donor and plus
Yep.
the surrogates to make it the whole process legal and straightforward in some of the states in the US. So we decided to use agency called First Life, based in California.
First love.
Yep. And then they sent us a database, access to database.
So this is just an egg donor agency.
This is the egg donor database, and we looked through and we found one lady, and we both of us felt quite connected and feels good about her. The second, we have a Skype interview with her.
Yep.
And 24 hours later, we had a phone conversation on Skype. Then probably about half hour later, we say, yep, we like her. If she feels the same, then let's do it.
So some of the donors you can actually have a talk with. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so she must have been an ID release donor or something. So she wasn't anonymous.
No, she wasn't. So all her details, including the education, background, and everything else, her preferences, all listed in the database.
Okay, great. Okay, so you had the donor. Then what about an IVF clinic? What did you do for that part?
They're all done through the agent. So the agent will give us some choices. Obviously, we wanted to be done in California.
Yep.
Because at that time, I think the legal content was more straightforward.
Yep.
And also we found a surrogate also through the same agent, also based in California. So
Yep.
we want everything done within a kind of similar distance to make things a bit stress-free.
Right. Okay. And so was this is same love or first love or something?
Yes, same.
And so
Same love.
they found you the surrogate too.
Yes.
Okay, great. And how did it take long to match with a surrogate in the US?
No. Very fast. So once you pay the deposit, and then they send you some options, and you can pretty much move forward straight away. And I know that some people were taking months or even years to decide on it, but Ron and I are both very kind of straightforward, and we look for emotional connection. So even looking at the profile, and we always want to have interview. And when we chat, and if we feel there is a good connection, we'll see.
Okay, great. So you made some embryos. Was there arguments about who'd be the sperm donor?
No. We keep saying that you do it, and there was no argument at all.
Right. And it sounds like, Mark, you and Chris decided you do one each anyway. Did you?
Yeah, there was a bit of argy-bargy around who goes first.
Was
You
there,
don't know
right?
if you're going to get a second time round. Just boiled down to pragmatics that there were a lot of, I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, so my parents had lots of
Okay.
grandchildren, and Mark's mother didn't have any grandchildren. So
Okay, got it.
he won.
Christian, your first surrogate, the transfer didn't work the first time, is that right?
Yeah, and the first surrogate was a great lady, and she looks perfect on paper.
Yeah.
So she was young and she was healthy. She has 3 healthy babies, no previous issues in pregnancy, and more importantly, she is very, very caring person with a supportive husband. So yeah, and everything was perfect. And our embryo, we have 6 very high quality embryo developed, all genetically tested. So we're all ready to go. And the first pregnancy didn't work.
Right.
So as we kind of expected, but it was also a shock. I think that was very, very emotional for us. So we thought, we've done everything we can,
Yeah.
and it should work, but it didn't. And the second time, it did work, but it ended up ectopic pregnancy.
So when did you find that out? How far in?
Well, I was I think it's about a month into it. And Grant and I flew back to China to meet my parents to tell them the news. And after we came back to New Zealand, we got a phone call from the not agency, I think it's from the clinic, say Brianna ended up in the hospital and she had an emergency surgery. So from there, we still wanted to go with her because we said, she invested so much in it, and we also invested so much in it, more kind of emotionally.
Yeah.
But the doctor said it's not going to be good for you or for her. So
Okay. Did you wish you hadn't told your parents that early?
Yeah. So I think that's our big mistake, is that we set our expectation high.
Yeah.
When you work with agent, they tell you a rough figure and how much it's going to cost, and they will tell you some excellent cases, one-time success rate and so forth, and they will tell you the numbers as well. But in our case, it didn't work. Yeah. And it was real. It's 100% fail.
Yeah. So did it take long to match it with a surrogate a second time?
It wasn't, but for us, we didn't plan to have that kind of bumpy road.
Yeah.
And we felt quite crashed emotionally. We didn't know that whether it's even worth go forward and whether we financially can continue that.
Yeah.
So Grant and I said, well, let's not talk about this and just kind of think about it in our heads for a week or so, and then let's talk about it all over again.
Yeah.
And then we sit down, and I said to Grant, I said, I want to do it again, just one final time. And then Grant said, you do know that our chance now is super limited, and it's got to be absolute last chance. And I said, yep.
What was limited?
The chance this time.
Yeah.
Because we lost twice, and we, as you know, it's in the US. Even there's no successful pregnancy, the money still go out.
Yeah.
Or the money still continue. So
yeah, that's right.
We spend most of the money that we planned for, but we haven't achieved anything yet.
Yeah.
And basically have to restart everything over.
Oh my God. What sort of qualities do you need to engage in surrogacy as a personality qualities?
You've got to be resilient. You've got to be organized, manage your expectation, but make sure you have the support, emotional support, and hopefully have some money as well. You do want to go through that road in the US.
Yeah, sure. What's your baby's name?
Logan.
Logan, that's right. So Logan was born in 2021?
2020.
2020, okay. So at the time, COVID had hit the USA in a major way. I think, how long were you able to get there for the birth?
Yeah, when we first heard the news that New Zealand borders were closed, Grant just said, I'm going to fly there tomorrow, just in case that we can't go there. I said, just settle down. I think it's not going to be that bad. But we're literally prepared to go there at any moment, just because it's not going to be us not to be there with our baby when they're first born. So we just look at the changes very, very carefully. our flight changed over 20 times over the whole
Wow.
time. And, we became an expert of talking to Air New Zealand and say, what we do now? And still was, know all about this. And
So there were some sorts of direct flights were there from Auckland.
there were some flights, but they keep shifting it and canceling it and changing it.
Yeah.
And also our surrogate, the second surrogate was in Albuquerque, not really Albuquerque, it's a town that's
New Mexico?
New Mexico.
Okay, so you had to get to New Mexico. So, right. Okay, so did you get there? How long before the birth did you get there?
We got there, I think about a month before the birth.
Because you were
Like,
worried.
Yeah, and also we had a planned C-section, and our second surrogate also had a complex pregnancy. The baby's position was a bit low, so she was constantly under supervision by 2 doctors. So we didn't want to risk anything. We said it was going to give us lots of time. Also prepare to be COVID positive.
Did you catch it?
No.
Were you able to be in the birth room for the birth?
Yes. we
Great,
were.
great.
And our surrogate's husband said, I don't want to be there. I was seen it all. You two can go. Because they only allowed two people there.
And your surrogate partner didn't want to go?
No.
Okay, great. I wasn't lucky enough to be allowed in the birth room for my kid's birth. Can you guys tell us a bit what it's like being in the room for your surrogate's birth?
Very, very surreal. And I still remember the moment, we were sitting on this side, obviously we couldn't see the other side, but we were just thinking what's going to happen now. And then soon you hear a baby cry and we start, my first reaction is say, 2 hands, two legs, and eyes are there and everything is fine. Is baby able to cry and so forth. And Grant and I just broke into tears. And all the doctors and nurses were very supportive, saying, it's your day, just cry your heart out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, and then when the baby's in your arms, and you just felt, wow, this little person is going to be your job the rest of your life.
Was it slightly terrifying to be in charge of this little baby, like as a man without a female there? Do you think, oh my God, we're going to do something wrong?
No, we did practice naked changing
Okay, great.
with a doll at home, but changing a real baby was very different because they move around, they stay there, and yeah, but I think the great thing about it in the US is they teach you everything.
Right.
Of course, come with the money, but we constantly have nurses come to show us how to do the first bath,
Okay,
how to
great.
feed them, and how to hold them or everything. So that was pretty good.
Yeah. Chris, for you guys, were your births of the kids a big family affair? Did everybody turn up in the birthing suite, or
No, but we had a few people. So
was it home birth?
no. It was at the hospital. Mark and I were both in the room along with our surrogate and her husband.
Yeah.
And he sort of labours with her. They've got quite an intimate thing going when she gives birth. And so we're sort of there, just waiting with bated breath, really. So it's a really tense moment. And the longer it goes, you kind of feel like what's going to go wrong, sort of thing. But it was amazing. And Nadine and I had talked earlier, and she kind of wanted me to catch the baby, and I just thought, oh God, that sounds really difficult, and I could drop it and all that sort of stuff. But I'm really glad she did push me, because it was actually one of the most wonderful experiences I've ever had.
Wow.
So it was a new side to an anatomy that I'm not really used to. But it was
When you say
wonderful.
catch the baby, you mean it's coming
She
out?
stood, and I was there with the midwife to catch both of our babies.
Also, they stand up for the last bit.
She chose to.
Yeah,
It was comfortable for her. The second time around, logistically, because we had Lucas, I was in Palmerston North alone, staying with them, and was there in the birthing suite, just by myself, and Mark and Lucas came up the day after that.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, but I wouldn't trade that.
Yeah, amazing. Stuart, any tips for intending parents, like who are thinking of going through this process? What, from a personal point of view?
It is that thing of trying to find somebody right, and because your kids are connected to this person as well, and they want to know who that person is, and you don't want to feel I always felt I don't want my kid to turn around to me and say, you exploited that person, you took the piss out of that person, they were vulnerable, you exploited them, and this is how I came about. Or that's a really, horrible person, that's my birth mother. I want the kid to be proud of who they are as well.
Yeah.
And a nice person, somebody I would want to spend time with. And I didn't want to, we didn't want to just get anybody and just do this and get a kid and take it away.
Yeah, so getting the right match is important.
Yeah, get a good match and be resilient and as I said, be prepared to walk away would be my top thing. And it's horrendously difficult to do it, but you have to do it.
Yeah. Chris Hunter, did you guys work with the first surrogate who you started talking with online, or did you go through a few?
No, she was the first one that offered,
Wow.
and we did get along. We had a lot of late night conversations, which was really good. It really pissed my husband off because it took a lot of time out of our marriage sometimes, which
Right.
is an important point to make. Is that I truly do feel like for us, we were inviting another person into our marriage for a really protracted period of time.
Yeah. So this is a pretty intimate experience, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It is a third party, third person in the
Somebody
relationship.
else's needs have to come equal to both of you at the same time, and that's difficult. I found it difficult juggling, and so did Mark. But it was all worth it.
Yeah.
But it's something you've got to have fortitude.
Yeah. Any questions people have got about anything we've heard today? We try and get a heterosexual couple on here, but they're often shy to talk about their journey. So it is often a struggle to get them on, but that does happen. There's plenty of heterosexual couples who do this too. So don't think that there aren't. I suppose one more question I've got. I suppose for you, Christian, what was the hardest thing about the process for you guys?
I think the hardest thing was the distance.
Yeah.
It's made it really challenging to know, because the first time we didn't think it was very difficult. Then after a few times, and you start to realize that anything could go wrong any minute, and we wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
So I think that was really challenging.
Yeah.
But also knowing that there is a big part of the success related to luck.
Yeah.
And you can only do so much, and after that, it's hands off. It's really dependent on whether nature is going to make it work or not.
Yeah, you're right. And look, there are a lot of journeys where they do take 4 or 5 or 6 transfers and 2 or 3 surrogates sometimes to work. So, these guys have had a pretty good road to it compared to some people I talk to. Yeah. All right. That's great. One final question for you, Chris Hunter, is what about your families? Did you tell them early, your own parents, that you were going ahead, or did you wait until you had a pregnancy on the go?
No, we knew we would need their support, and we're pretty open with our families anyway.
Yeah.
So they knew about intention that we
Yeah.
wanted to do this one day, and they knew when we met someone who had offered to help us.
Yeah.
And so they were with us throughout the whole journey.
Yeah. Okay. Great. What tips would you give people who were considering surrogacy? Any wise words you've got for people?
It's worth your patience. It's worth your efforts. You have to give it a go if this is something you want to do.
Yeah.
Perseverance is huge. Being open with the people that you love about your joys but your lows as well. And I think in terms of the relationship with a surrogate or a donor, whatever that may look like for you, I think you've got to be able to negotiate and know when to pick your battles with people as well. Yes, you have to have a positive relationship for sure, but also you've got to give a lot of yourself to it.
Yeah.
To make it work.
I mean, a lot of surrogates admit to me, they get pretty hormonal on these medications and stuff, and they get crappy and they have a bad day and they moan and groan behind the backs of the intending parents because they just feel up and down.
Yeah.
And it does cause tension. I see that, whether they're a family member or not. So I suppose you guys need to be aware that it is quite tough for the surrogates if they are on medications before and during the pregnancy and even after. Can be hard for them too. Guys, you got a question? Yeah.
I'm just wondering if any of you that it's using it for things that and if you ever had that.
I would have been open to it, for sure. I don't know, part of me feels like I would look at that child as well, and yeah, it'd be beautiful that if I could see some of the family resemblance there as well. I don't know, part of me would feel a little bit sad about it as well, so I'm not sure if I'd go through with it. But I didn't have that option.
Sorry, what was the question?
About having a sibling as an egg donor.
You
I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, wasn't that an option for me? My sister had her own fertility journey and couldn't conceive of children either. And my partner's sisters, they were making babies at the time, so it wasn't a time for them. And my sister's in the UK and my family's, my partner's family's in Malaysia, so it's another thing as well. But yeah, I mean, going back to that question, you asked things that I would say to people. I would say allow yourself to bitch and moan about your kids once they're born, because I felt that when we had our kid, the first one is that I can't complain, I can't say anything because the altruistic thing that somebody has done here to have a child for me, that I can't actually moan about anything. And it took me a while to get to that point. Say, actually, I'm just entitled to moan about my kids as everybody else is. So yeah, bitch and moan.
I do get guys coming to me saying to me after the kid, you didn't tell me it was going to be this hard being a parent. So you're right, you have to think hard about the fact that your life will change. Well, yeah. Any other questions we've got? All right, look, that's great. Thank you guys so much for sharing. It's really useful to get a real first-hand view of what it's like and stuff. People who've done it more recently than I have. So yeah, thanks a heap. And yeah, to know that like you guys are a bit different over here. New Zealand and UK have got lots of traditional surrogacy. Australia doesn't have that much at all, so it's good to see it possible here too. All right, thanks a heap. That's all we're doing. Come and have a chat if you need to. There's some brochures about lots of the providers we talked about at the back of the room there. But I hope that was helpful. So you've been on a bit of a long journey already, yeah. With a few sort of false starts.
Very serious. So,
Yeah, but it's common,
yes, that's right. So I think I had my time picking up the I do the three sort of teams, three different channels.